I praise Allah. I thank Allah for the endowments that He has given us, without Him being obligated to give us anything. And I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad and to protect this Muslim nation from whenever he feared for it. May Allah grant us all these sincere intentions and the good ending. So last week we talked about some of the different types of hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned that some of the hadith are mutawatir. They are hadith which are conveyed by a large group of people to another large group of people, and they in turn convey that information to another large group of people in a way that it is normally impossible that all of these people would come together and the mutawatir hadith promotes definitive knowledge. علم قطعي. And we mentioned that what is less than mutawatir, it is called ahad. What is less than mutawatir is called ahad. And this type of hadith is divided up into two categories. One is mashhur, and the other is what is less than that. The mashhur is the hadith which is conveyed by at least 3 people to another group of people who are at least 3 in number, to another group of people who are at least 3 in number, so forth and so on until it reaches us. And this type of hadith also promotes definitive knowledge, ilmun qat'i. It promotes definitive knowledge. However, this definitive knowledge it is definitive in reference to the expert, that is to the hafiz of hadith. As for the one who does not have the tools to judge the hadith, it does not promote definitive knowledge for them. Now, here, this brings us to a beneficial point. Who or what is a hafiz? Now, nowadays, you have some people who do not have enough knowledge in the field of hadith, and they would rush to say that such and such a hadith is sahih or da'if or hasan, etc. Even a person of knowledge may say this. However, not every scholar is qualified to do that. Not every scholar is qualified to do it. So, of course, anyone who is less than a scholar is not qualified at all to do it. So even not every scholar of hadith is qualified to classify a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as authentic or not authentic. And it classifies the strength of the hadith. Only a few people are experts in that field. So it is not permissible for people like me to say on my own, to study a hadith, then to study the chain of the hadith, then to say that this hadith is sahih or this hadith is da'if. Al-Hafiz As-Suyuti in his poem, his novel, in the knowledge of hadith, he said clearly that if a person wants to know if a hadith is sahih or not, then either they rely on a book authored by a hafiz, a proficient expert in that field, in which he mentions that those hadiths in the book are sahih. So he authored a book to cite sahih hadith. This is one way of knowing whether a hadith is sahih or not. The other way is for a proficient scholar of hadith, a hafiz, who says about the hadith in question that it is sahih or other than that. So maybe the hafiz authored a book for that specific purpose, or maybe he mentions in another book the classification of the hadith. But only a hafiz of hadith is qualified to do that. Not every scholar is qualified to do it. So let me give you an example. Someone might research the chain of narrators for a hadith. Then he might say that this narrator here is a weak one. He did not have a strong memory. Whenever he narrated the hadith, he memorized the chains, but he used to mix things up. So he made a lot of unintentional mistakes. So he didn't have a strong memory. He committed a lot of mistakes. So because of this reason, he is not reliable. Therefore, this person who researched the chain might say, therefore, this hadith is weak. All the while, this person cannot say that. Because there might be another chain for this hadith, another narration, that shows that this person, in this particular narration, in this particular hadith, did not mix things up. He is a trustworthy person. He doesn't lie. But he doesn't have a strong memory. So sometimes he makes mistakes. However, not all the time. Sometimes. So in this case, he didn't make a mistake. And you would know that he didn't make a mistake from another narration which supports what he narrated. Therefore, you cannot judge the hadith as being weak in this case. So this is not something easy that anyone can do. Some people nowadays, they take the hadith, then they go back to reference books, or they Google the narrators, or they use al-maktaba al-shamila, for example, digital copies of books, without even verifying if the printed or the digital copy is the reliable copy. Merely they buy it from a bookstore and they refer to it. So they don't actually have a reliable copy. And then we talked about this issue when we spoke about how to acquire the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and other types of knowledge. So some people, they would take a printed book without comparing it to a reliable manuscript, not any manuscript, but a reliable one, which was written or reviewed by a hafiz, by an expert in the field. They rely on any book. They buy it from any bookstore. Then they rely upon that material to judge the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as being sahih or not. And based upon that, they would say such and such a thing is wajib or it is not. This is prohibited or it's not. Even if one had reliable copies, they would still not be qualified to do it. This is not their job. Now, the first person who opened this door and many people followed him in it was Nasiruddin Al-Albani. Nasiruddin Al-Albani. So his name is Al-Albani, not Albani. So he is originally Albanian. Al-Albani. And as you know, he died some years ago. Within the past 15 years. One scholar asked him for a debate. That scholar went to the session. They wanted to agree on certain things before starting the debate, like certain rules and procedures. So that scholar was talking about who is qualified to say whether a hadith is authentic or not. And he's a hafiz. So Al-Albani said, well, I am qualified to judge the hadith. So that scholar said to him, can you narrate 10 hadith with a continuous chain of narrators from yourself to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Just 10, not 100, not 1,000. You are claiming to be a hafiz, just 10. And even if a scholar narrates 100,000 hadith with their chains of narration, it's still not a hafiz. They're still not a hafiz. That's still not enough. Even 100,000. So the scholar asked Al-Albani to narrate 10 hadith with a continuous chain of narration from himself back to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So Al-Albani then said, I can't do that. I don't memorize the chains of narration. He said, I am a hafiz of books, which means he memorizes books, the hadith, and without their chains. He doesn't have any chains himself, and he would go back to the books concerning the situations of the narrators, ilm al-rijal, al-jarh wa ta'adil, etc., and he would check the books. So this was his situation, and someone like that is not a musnid nor a muhaddith, let alone a hafiz. So Al-Albani opened this door, and then many people followed him in this issue. And so you might find people saying, I think this is sahih, I think this is da'if, although Al-Bukhari said it is sahih. And people would not agree with Al-Bukhari. You find people like that nowadays. And such people, they are like nothing compared to those scholars of hadith, those top scholars of hadith. Sometimes for a single hadith, they would have memorized 20 different chains. Knowing, and for one hadith, they memorized 20 different chains. So for one hadith, they may have memorized 20 different chains, knowing all of the people in the chains, and being able to differentiate this narrator is a learned one, a scholar, a knowledgeable person. He learned from so-and-so and so-and-so. He did not learn from this person and that person, although they lived in the same era. He went to this specific city seeking the knowledge. He sought the knowledge from this scholar and that scholar. He met with this one and he met with that one. Among his students was this person and that person. He heard from him these hadith and not these other hadith. He took from him by ijazah this and that. And he heard or he read on him this and that. And there is a difference of opinion about this issue and that issue regarding him. Did he take this from this person or did he take it from another person? Was his memory like this or was his memory like that? And was his memory strong until he reached an old age, or after what age did he lose his mind? So people who took hadith from him, what age did they take it from? Before he lost his mind or after? Before he reached this age in which his memory got weak, or after? I mean, this is a big job. This is not like just going to a book to check what that book says about the narrator. What does that book say? Then you say this hadith is sahih or da'if, as some people might do. Not that easy. And a person cannot merely go to a book to see what the book says, and then based upon that judge a hadith as sahih or da'if. Just to give you an idea what it means for a person to be a hafiz of hadith, how much hadith and how many different narrations would he have to memorize. And some of you know the story of Al-Bukhari. When Al-Bukhari first went to Baghdad, he didn't live there. He went there for a period of time. Before he came, some scholars of Baghdad agreed to do something. they chose 100 different hadiths with their chains. And they chose 10 among them. Each one would choose 10 hadiths, 10 different hadiths. So the sum is 100. So 10 scholars, each one has 10 hadiths. So when Al-Bukhari came, the first scholar went to him, asked him about those 10 hadiths. However, what he did was he mixed the chain of hadith with this statement. So he narrated the hadith, but with a different chain of narration. Not with the actual chain of narration. So he took the chain from one hadith and narrated with that hadith, with that chain, a different hadith. One moment. Bismillah. Okay. So, one scholar, he goes to Al-Bukhari. He asks him, do you know of this hadith who is narrated from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so? And Al-Bukhari would say, I don't know this hadith. Then he goes to the next hadith, and he says, do you know of this hadith narrated from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so? And Al-Bukhari would say, no, I don't know this hadith, until he finishes all 10. Then the next scholar would do the same thing until he finishes his 10. Then the next one until he finishes his 10. So forth and so on until all 100 hadiths Al-Bukhari is asked about. And every single hadith Al-Bukhari says, I don't know it. I don't know this hadith. Yani, this narration. So, when they all finished the 100 hadith, the people who are not scholars, who are not high-level proficient scholars of hadith, they thought to themselves, this is the famous Al-Bukhari that we heard about. They only mention 100 hadith to him and he doesn't know any of them. While the scholars who asked him, they said, MashaAllah, he is extremely knowledgeable. They were very, very impressed. Then, why? Because Then Al-Bukhari, what did he do? He went to the first one. He says, as for this hadith that you narrated, it is narrated from this route. So he took the hadith that the first one mentioned, and he gave it its proper chain of narration. Moreover, he narrated the hadith back to those scholars in the exact order that they asked him about. So without him, all from his memory. So the first scholar, every hadith that he asked him about, he memorized what he asked him about in the order that he asked him about. And the second one, the same thing. The third one, the same thing. Up to the 10th scholar and the 100th hadith. All in the same order. And nowadays, some people, if you say 10 words, let alone 10 sentences, they will not repeat them the way that you told them, in the order that you told them. And this is Al-Bukhari. He authored his book of Tarikh, which is a book of Ilm al-Rijal, the knowledge of the narrators. And it's very big. It has a lot of volumes. It is maybe I don't know, 2 feet worth of books. So maybe 12, 13 volumes, something like this. And he wrote that book from his memory. All of it he wrote from his memory. So, and you're not talking about poetry, which is fairly easy to memorize. You're talking about narrators, names, birth dates, where they died, when they died, who did they learn from, who were their students, mentioning one hadith narrated from their route. All of this from his memory. This is what a hafiz is. Not like Al-Albani. One time, Al-Albani, he said to a man, and he picked a narrator, and he said about this narrator that this narrator is weak, da'if. Then it turned out that he was mistaken, because the book that he referred to say that this man was weak had a printing mistake. So the name was wrong. It was a different man. So he judged the hadith as being weak because he could not recognize there was a mistake in the printed book. Another example, the word tawr and thawr. Tawr, ta, waw, ra, and thawr, ta, waw, ra. The only difference between the two is one dot. One dot. So, in one book, it was printed Thawr with 3 dots. While in reality, it should be Thawr with 2 dots. So Al-Albani, he started explaining Thawr means an ox or a bull, and Thawr it's something that has to do with cheese. I'm not sure how to explain it. So there is a big difference between an ox and something that relates to cheese. However, Al-Albani could not recognize that there was a printing mistake in the book. So he started explaining the Hadith, and such a person like this cannot be a hafiz. He is not, as I said, he was not even a musnid, let alone a hafiz. He was not even at the lowest level of Hadith scholarship. So only the experts in the field of Hadith are qualified to judge the Hadith. As Al-Hafiz As-Suyuti and others before him said, like Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Al-Bayhaqi, Al-Nawawi, Ibn Hajar, Murtada, Al-Zabidi, people like these who spent their lives studying this knowledge, memorizing, acquiring, searching. They had good qualities, good aqidah, good deeds. And those people are the ones who are qualified for that, not just anyone. Now, inshallah, let's talk about the third proof in the religion. So, if you remember, when we started the subject, we said that there are 4 proofs, or 4 proofs in the religion. The first is Al-Quran. The second is the Sunnah, the Hadith. And now the third, Al-Ijma', the consensus. Now the consensus means for the top scholars who reached the level of ijtihad amongst the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to agree together in one era upon the judgment of one case. If this occurs in any era, then the ijma' is established. So if the companions agreed, and when we say the companions, we mean the mujtahid among the companions, because not all of the companions reached the level of ijtihad. And even some scholars said only 10 among the companions were fuqaha, were at the level of ijtihad. And some said more. But most of the companions did not reach the level of a mujtahid. Rather, what they used to do, they used to ask the mujtahid about them. They used to ask the mujtahids about the judgment after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and during his lifetime. And during the lifetime of the Prophet, the companions who were not scholars would go to those who were and to ask them questions. And after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those companions who were not scholars, who were not mujtahids, they used to follow the mujtahid among them. So the consensus is the consensus of the mujtahid. Why is that? As if someone says we are talking about the consensus of the nation, if other than the mujtahids have different opinions, how would it still be that the nation has a consensus on this issue? Why is it that the non-mujtahid, their opinion, which may be different, why is it that their opinion is not taken into consideration? So the consensus of the nation means the consensus of the mujtahid, because the person who is not a mujtahid, he is obligated to follow the mujtahid in this case. And he is prohibited from making ijtihad himself. And he is not qualified to do it. And the opinion of the unqualified has no consideration. The opinion of the unqualified has no consideration. Now, if the mujtahids among the companions agreed on the ruling of a case, the judgment of a case, then the consensus is established. And it is not permissible for those who come after the companions, even a mujtahid who comes after them, to violate the consensus. This means to give a different judgment from what the companions gave. Likewise, if a new case arises at the time of the followers of the companions, then the mujtahids among them, they agree upon a judgment. Then the consensus is established. So those who come after them, the mujtahids among them, among the people who come after this era, after the followers of the companions, they are not permitted to give a different judgment for that case. And this continues until nowadays. So if a judgment of a case is not discussed until a certain time, or let me put it another way. If a new case arises, one which was not addressed at all, or one which was not dealt with either verbally or by action, so it comes up, the mujtahids of the era in which it arises agree altogether on the judgment of that case, the same judgment for the same case. Then the ijma' is established. Those who come after them, they are not allowed to give a judgment that differs from the judgment which was previously given. So the ijma', the consensus, is not merely the consensus of the companions or the consensus of the Salaf. The ijma' applies, the establishment of the ijma' applies for all the errors. And if the mujtahids give the same judgment for one mas'ala, one case, then the ijma' is established. Now, if the mujtahids in one era, they have two opinions about a case, so some of them, they give one judgment, and some of them give another judgment. So in that era, the mujtahids gave only two different judgments about the same mas'ala, the same case. Now, is this an ijma'? The answer is yes and no. Is this considered a consensus? The answer is yes and no. On one hand, there is a valid difference of opinion. There is ikhtilaf. So one is allowed to follow this, and one is allowed to follow the other judgment. So in this sense, there is no ijma'. On the other hand, there is an agreement, there is an agreement that the judgment is either this or either that. So any other possibility of what the judgment could have been is eliminated. So there is, in a sense, a consensus that the judgment is this or that. One of these two opinions. Therefore, any person, whether they are a mujtahid or not, who comes after this era in which the mujtahids gave these two judgments, they are not permitted to come up with a third one. They are not allowed to come up with a third one, because those who were before them agreed altogether that the other possibilities were excluded, which is, in fact, a case of ijma'. So the mujtahid agreed all together that the other possibilities have been excluded. So one cannot go according to a third judgment. Let me give you an example. If someone dies and his wife is pregnant, then the iddah of the widow of the wife ends when she gives birth. Okay? Now, some among the companions, like a small number, like Ibn Abbas and a few others, they had a different opinion. Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, if she gives birth before 4 months and 10 days, then her iddah remains 4 months and 10 days. If 4 months and 10 days lapse before she gave birth, then her iddah is when she gives birth. So, whichever one is longer. So, if 4 months and 10 days is longer than when she gives birth, then this is when her iddah is over. If she gives birth beyond 4 months and 10 days after her husband dies, then this is when her iddah is. And we're talking about 4 lunar months, of course, if she is pregnant. So Ibn Abbas had a different opinion. Now, so let me repeat. One opinion is that if a woman is pregnant and her wife and her husband dies while she is pregnant, her iddah ends when she gives birth. This is one opinion. The other opinion is if a woman is pregnant and her husband dies while she is pregnant, then her iddah is when she delivers or 4 months and 10 days, whichever one comes last. Okay, so I just said it in a different way, whichever one comes last. So these are 2 opinions among the scholars. Among the companions, most of them said her iddah is when she gives birth. Whether that happens 1 hour, 1 day, 10 days, 7 months, 8 months, 2 years. Whenever she gives birth, this is when her iddah is over. And a few of the companions, like Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, had a different opinion. But there was no third opinion among the companions, among the mujtahid companions. There was no third opinion, only these 2. Now, those who came after them they were not permitted to say, they were not allowed to say that the iddah ends after 4 months and 10 days, just like the one who is not pregnant. So if the husband of a woman dies, her iddah is what? 4 months and 10 days. This is not the same judgment as Ibn Abbas. This is different. It's not what he said. He didn't say her iddah is the same as the one who is not pregnant, the iddah of the widow. So this is a third saying. However, this saying was excluded by all of the companions. So there was a consensus among them that this was not a valid judgment. Those who came after them were not permitted to choose a third option, a third judgment, because the mujtahids who were before them had a consensus that this is not a valid judgment. Now, there are several proofs mentioned in the Sharia that the consensus is a valid proof. There are several. One of them is the 115th ayah of Surah An-Nisa, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. The general meaning is anyone who is hostile to the messenger after guidance has been plainly conveyed to him and follows a path other than that of the believers, وَيَتَّبِعْ, and he follows غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, a path other than that of the believers. نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ. Allah shall leave him in a path, and in the path that he chose. وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ, and cast him and throw him into hell. وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا, which is an evil place or evil refuge. So in this verse, Allah mentioned those who deviated from the way of the believers, that they deserve to be punished in hell. So this means that following the way of the believers, the way the Muslims follow, is an obligation. It is not permissible to deviate from them, which means it is not permissible to deviate from the consensus of the Muslim. This is what it means. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that his nation does not agree on a misguidance. لا تجتمع أمتي على ضلالة. And Ibn Majah and others, they narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, فَمَنْ أَرَادَ بُحْبُوحَةَ الْجَنَّةِ فَلْيَلْزَمِ الْجَمَاعَةِ. The one who wants to adhere, the one who wants to enjoy the luxuries, the endowments of paradise, then let him adhere, let him stick to the jama'ah of the Muslims. And there are many other hadiths. Now, if it is said, why did the scholars of Islam say that the consensus means the consensus of the Muslims? Why did they not include other than the mujtahid in that? I mean, because those who did not reach the level of ijtihad, they are obligated to follow the mujtahid. And they are not qualified for ijtihad. So it is not permissible for them to have their own ijtihad, their own opinion pertaining to the matters of the religion. Because they're not qualified for that. They have to follow the mujtahid. As Allah said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. So the non-mujtahid has to follow the mujtahid. So what counts in the issue of consensus, the issue of ijma', is what the mujtahid says. And the others are obligated to follow them. If someone other than a mujtahid comes up with a different opinion, he does not follow any of the mujtahids, then he's committing a sin. And the path of the believers is not a path of sin. So no consideration is given to the opinion of a person who is sinning in their opinion. I mean, their opinion is based in sin. They're not allowed to give their opinion. So their opinion has no weight. Their saying has no weight concerning the matter of al-ijma'. Now, if someone does not follow the mujtahid in a religious matter, if they come up with their own opinion that differs from what the mujtahid says, as we said, they are committing a sin. And this person was not qualified to produce a judgment. So, no consideration. Now, even if this person was a scholar, if they breach the consensus, no consideration is taken. if, for example, I don't know anything about medicine, and if someone talks about the consensus in a medical issue, my saying is not considered at all, regardless of what I say, because I don't know about medical issues. If someone doesn't know anything about farming, if you're talking about the consensus related to farming, what this person says has no weight. He doesn't know what he's talking about because he's not an expert whose opinion is considered. So the one who is not a mujtahid, his saying does not have any weight. This is why the scholar said that what counts for ijma' is what the mujtahid says. If all of them came together to agree on one matter, on one case, then the ijma' is established. This is enough for the ijma' to be established. And I think this is, there are a number of issues we need to cover concerning this, but I think this is enough for today. Allahu subhanahu wa ta'ala ya'lam wa ahkam. Allah knows best. If anyone has any questions, please ask. آمين وفيك. وفيك. آمين.